There is a whole industry online right now selling you magic words. Learn these secret prompts and the AI will finally do what you want. Pay for this pack of 200 power prompts. Memorize this one phrase and watch your results transform. And I get why it sells, because it feels like there is a hidden key and you just have to find it. But I have spent the last year using these models for real work that ships every single day, and I want to say something that is going to annoy a lot of people. The exact wording of your prompt is the least important part of getting good results. It matters a little at the edges, and I will be honest about where, but the stuff everyone obsesses over is mostly not the thing. So in this video, I am going to tell you what people waste their time on, why it barely moves the needle with a good modern model, and what actually changes your results with a simple way to think about it that anyone can use. First, what everyone obsesses over, let me describe the thing I see everywhere, because you have almost certainly seen it too. There is the secret phrase crowd, who believe that if you just say the right incantation, like take a deep breath and work through this step by step, you unlock some hidden mode. There is the long template crowd, who paste a 1,000-word wall of instructions in front of every single request, full of rules and warnings and formatting demands. There is the roleplay crowd, who open everything with you, are a world-class expert with 20 years of experience, as if flattery changes the math. And there is the punctuation and capital letters crowd, who genuinely believe that shouting in all caps or adding 3 exclamation marks makes the model try harder. All of this gets sold as prompt engineering, and I understand the appeal completely. It feels like a craft, it feels like a skill you can collect, and it gives you something to tweak when the output is not what you wanted. Why the magic words mostly do not matter. Here is the uncomfortable part. With a good modern model, almost none of that does much, and the reason is simple. These models got a lot better at understanding what you actually mean, even when you say it plainly. The old tricks come from an older era, when models were weaker and genuinely needed you to hold their hand through every step. So you really did get a noticeable lift from saying think step by step, because the model would otherwise rush to a sloppy answer. But the newer models often do that reasoning on their own now, so the magic phrase is just adding words that were already happening under the hood. The roleplay opener is the same story. Telling a strong model it is a world-class expert does very little, because it already has the knowledge, and your real instruction is what steers it. And shouting in capitals does nothing at all except make your prompt harder to read. I am not saying these things actively hurt you most of the time. I am saying you are polishing the doorknob while the door is wide open. You can spend an hour rewording a request and get a result that is basically identical to the plain version you started with. And people do this constantly and call it work. Let me get to the part that actually matters, because this is where the real gains live, and almost nobody is selling it as a course. The single biggest lever, by a huge margin, is context. The model is not psychic. It only knows what you put in front of it. When I get a bad answer, 90% of the time it is because I asked a question that depended on things the model could not possibly know. It did not have the document, it did not have the example of what good looks like, it did not have the constraints I was holding in my own head. The moment I paste in the actual material, the real file, the real data, the real background, the answer gets dramatically better, and I did not change a single clever word. Think about how you would answer the same question if a coworker asked it. If they gave you no background and no documents, you would either guess or ask for more. The model cannot ask, so it just guesses, and then people blame the wording. So before you reach for a magic phrase, ask yourself a simpler question. Does this thing have everything it would need to answer well? Usually the honest answer is no, and you have just been hiding that gap behind fancier and fancier instructions. Show it instead of telling it. The second lever is examples, and this one is almost magic compared to the wording tricks. If you want output in a specific shape, a specific tone, a specific format, do not write 3 paragraphs describing it. Just show the model 1 or 2 examples of what you want and let it copy the pattern. I cannot tell you how many times I struggled to explain a format in words, gave up, pasted a single example of a finished one, and got exactly what I wanted on the first try. Showing beats telling almost every time. A good example carries more information than a page of careful instructions because the model is extremely good at noticing a pattern and continuing it. Words about the format are always a little ambiguous. One real example is not. It pins down the exact spacing, the exact tone, the exact level of detail you wanted, all the things you would never think to spell out in a rule. And if the first example does not quite land it, give it a second one that fixes whatever it got wrong, and the pattern locks in even tighter. So when you are tempted to write a longer and longer description, stop and ask whether you could just show it one done right instead. Give it the right tools. The third lever is tools, and this is where people really underestimate the gap. A model on its own is just predicting text from what it already knows, but the same model, connected to the ability to search the web, run code, read your files, or call a real function, is a completely different animal. If I ask a model to do math in its head, it can slip. If I let it write and run a little code to do that math, it gets it right every time because now it is using a calculator instead of guessing. The wording of the request barely matters next to whether the model can actually reach the thing it needs. A mediocre prompt with the right tool beats a beautiful prompt with no tool, basically always. So when an answer is wrong, before you reword it for the fifth time, ask whether the model even had a way to get the real answer or whether you were asking it to guess. Build a loop, not a lottery. The fourth lever is the one I think is the most underrated of all, and it is a feedback loop. Most people treat a prompt like a slot machine. They pull the lever, the output comes out, and if it is wrong, they just pull again with slightly different words and hope. That is a lottery, not a process. What actually works is reading the output, noticing exactly where it went wrong, and telling the model that specifically. You got the tone right, but the second point is factually off. Fix that. You used the wrong date here. Here is the correct one. This is closer. Now make it shorter. One round of honest correction beats 10 rounds of rewording the opening because you are giving the model new information instead of just reshuffling the same request. And the trick is to be specific about the error, not to just say that is wrong. Try again. Tell it which part is wrong and why, because that is the information it was missing the first time. The people who get great results are not better at writing the first prompts. They are better at steering across 3 or 4 turns. They treat the first answer as a draft to react to, not a verdict on whether their prompt was good enough, and sometimes just use a better model. And here is the lever nobody wants to hear, because you cannot sell a course on it. Sometimes the answer is just to use a stronger model. If you are fighting and fighting with a small or older model, rewording endlessly to squeeze out a decent answer, you are doing hard work that a better model would just do for you. I have watched people spend an afternoon engineering the perfect prompt for a weak model, when switching to a stronger one would have given them what they wanted with a lazy one-line request. The model itself is usually a bigger variable than anything you type into it. So before you go deep on prompt craft, make sure you are not just asking too much of something too small, a simple framework you can actually use. So let me make this practical because I do not want to just complain. Here is the order I actually run through when an answer is not good enough and it has held up across a year of real work. First, did it have the context? Did I give it the real material it needed, or did I expect it to read my mind? Second, did I show it an example? If I want a specific shape, did I paste one done right instead of describing it? Third, did it have the right tool? Could it actually reach the answer, or was I asking it to guess at something it should look up or compute? Fourth, did I close the loop? Did I read the output and correct it specifically, or did I just re-roll? And fifth, is the model strong enough for this at all? Notice that the exact wording is not even on this list until the very end. You will fix the vast majority of bad outputs with those 5 questions, and you will barely touch the phrasing. The honest caveat, because wording is not zero. Now I promised I would be fair, so here is the honest caveat. Wording is not worthless. It matters at the edges, and it matters more as the task gets trickier. When you are doing something genuinely hard, where the instructions are subtle or easy to misread, being clear and specific really does help. Saying answer in 3 short bullet points is better than asking vaguely for something brief, not because it is a magic phrase, but because it is precise. Removing a contradiction the model was tripping over genuinely fixes things. And at large scale, when the same prompt runs thousands of times, small consistent improvements in the wording really do add up. So people who run prompts in production do tune them, and they are right to. So I am not telling you wording never matters. I am telling you it is the last 10%, not the first 90, and almost everyone has the ratio backwards. The real skill is clear thinking, which brings me to the thing I actually believe after all of this. The real skill was never prompt engineering. It is clear thinking about what you want. The people who are great at getting results from these models are not memorizing incantations. They are unusually good at knowing exactly what they are asking for, spotting what information is missing, noticing when an answer is subtly wrong, and steering it back on track. That is not a trick you buy in a pack of 200 prompts. It is just the old skill of thinking clearly and communicating precisely, pointed at a new kind of tool. It is the same skill that makes someone good at briefing a freelancer or writing a clear ticket for a teammate. If you cannot explain what you want to a person, no clever phrasing is going to rescue it with a machine. The prompt is only ever a reflection of how clearly you understand the problem yourself. If your request is vague, no magic phrase will save it. And if your request is clear and well fed with context, you barely need any tricks at all. So the next time you see someone selling you the one secret prompt that changes everything, you can smile and move on. Give the model the real context, show it an example, hand it the right tool, check its work and correct it, and use a model strong enough for the job. That is the whole game, and the exact words you choose are the smallest part of it. Get good at thinking clearly about what you actually want, and the prompting mostly takes care of itself. People want more honest, hands-on breakdowns like this one with the real trade-offs and none of the hype. Subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.